today's video, we're going to be talking about collecting our horse. A lot of times people have a misconception of what collection is, that they will think that collection just happens on the head and the shoulders. A really common problem that most riders have is that they just ride this part of the horse. That a lot of times, because we don't have four legs, people don't pay attention to the horse's back legs. And the horse's hind end has a lot to do with the horse's collection. So I don't really focus when I'm starting to train horses on getting a perfect position through the head and the neck, because I know that collection comes through the horse's whole body uniting, and that's what makes a connected horse that is able to carry the weight of the rider well. I always think of collecting the horse in 3 blocks. So you have the head, and you have the shoulders, and then you have the hind end. And so the horse can disconnect through any of those blocks. So between the head and the shoulders, there's the neck. So the horse can overbend through the neck to create a disconnection between those 2 blocks. The horse can also disconnect from the shoulders and the hind through splaying as well. So if the horse takes a step wider than the width of their hips, that's them splaying. So today, in our video today, we're using Rufus. So Rufus is a really good school horse. He was already a great school horse. When I bought him, the lady I got him from did a really nice job with him, but he is kind of green in using his body. And so one of the things that he does oftentimes is he will splay. So when I ask him to take a step, he will take a really big step. So that first one was really big, but that second one was much better. So that's him disconnecting from the shoulders and the hind end. He can also splay in the shoulders, which can also cause disconnection. So the horse can disconnect side to side, like horizontally to the ground. They can also disconnect front to hind. So this horse used to brace a lot in his neck, and he used to camp a lot in his hind end. Since he's been in training with us, he brings his hind end much more underneath him, which you can see from him standing here, but he is kind of sway backed. It is getting better. And the reason he was sway backed is because a lot of times, as my teacher would say, his hind end, Craig Stevens would have said, is his hind end is in Timbuktu. And so when you watch, a lot of times people will think that the horse is collected, but their hind end is very far behind them. So when I walk him like this, you'll see that he doesn't use his hind end as well as some of the other horses. So in order to get him to collect, instead of trying to compress the front, which is just going to make him camp more, I want to try to think about bringing the hind more underneath him. So notice that now the base is starting to narrow, which makes him able to lift his back and carry the weight of the rider more comfortably. We actually just did a video on the difference between getting your horse in the ramene and getting your horse on the bit. So a lot of times people talk about getting the horse on the bit, and that's associated with a lot of pressure. Whenever we use pressure to try and collect our horses, there's a anatomical system in our horses called the dorsal ligament system. And what it does is it connects the pole to the hocks. And so when we create backwards pressure in the mouth, that's going to run through our horse's body all the way to the horse's hocks. And when that happens, to kind of get away from that pressure, what our horses will do is they'll leave their hind end behind them. So if you look at pretty much any modern competition horse, what you'll see is that the horse is very compressed. Some of them are collected from the head to the shoulders, but the hind end oftentimes is very far behind them, which means that they're not actually using their back. So when I work on collecting my horses, I want to think about bringing the hind end under so that I have somewhere for the horse to shift their weight onto when they shift their center of gravity further back. So instead of thinking that your horse needs to fit into this cookie cutter shape to collect the horse, you want to try to think about getting the horse's center of gravity to shift further back, and that's going to help them to lift their back and carry the weight of the rider. What I mean by that is oftentimes, because our horses are naturally going to have their head down and be eating grass all day, that their weight will be here further forward in their chest. As they start to collect, what you'll see is that they'll start to shift the weight further back and start to be underneath the pommel and close to the withers. So when that weight shift further back happens, we need to have the hind end under the horse so that it's there to be able to hold that weight. So when you are working on collecting your horse, think about doing half halts to help raise the head. So if you're not sure how to do a half halt, we have a great explanation on how to do it in our Harmony in Hand Part 1. But one of the first things that the half halt does is it raises the horse's head. But see, if I just raise his head, and with the green horse, he might not keep bringing the hind end under. So then I need to encourage by tapping on the top of the hind for the hind end to come underneath. But see, if I keep bringing the hind end under and I don't do half halts to shift the center of gravity further back, the horse is just going to speed up. So I want to try to think about bringing the hind end under and adding a little bit of half halt to get my horse to start to collect. But when I do the half halt, I'm not tapping on the hind. When I'm tapping on the hind, I'm not doing the half halt. So I'll do one second, and then I'll do the other one the next second, because I don't want to think about trying to compress this end with this end to get them to collect. He's the one who needs to collect himself and find his own balance, and that's how he'll start to build strength. Here we have Paris. He's still pretty young Mustang that's still pretty green, but we use him, we're going to use him as an example of a horse that moves more together and more collected than Rufus does. So if I get Paris walking, one of the things that you'll see compared to Rufus is that he doesn't leave his back legs behind as much. So if you look at his base and then you look at Paris's base, if you look at Rufus's base and then you look at Paris's base is much more narrow when he moves. And it doesn't matter if I'm lengthening him and letting him walk out, or if I'm shortening him and asking him to collect. That you'll see that when he comes up, he doesn't brace in the neck. He shifts his center of gravity further back and he brings his hind legs nice and underneath him. So that is what a collected horse looks like. And you can see that I'm not using any sort of force to ask him to do that. I'm just really gentle with my whip. And like I talked about in the video with Rufus, I do just gentle half halts because I don't want him to brace, and I can encourage him to come under with the hind. I get the lifting through the front, so I'm not just bringing the hind under, I'm also getting lifting through the front end through him raising his back and raising his withers.